Hey team, welcome back to the Rhythm Section, brought to you by The Mind Refinery. I'm your host, Kyle Bodanis. This week on the show, we're talking about what to expect from pop music's biggest artists in 2021. We're talking Drake, Kendrick, Beyonce, Rihanna, and a bunch more. Hope you enjoy it. If you like what you hear, rate and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and if you have time, follow us on social media. And now, here's the show. Alright guys, I'm joined as usual by the man himself, Coburn Blair. Coburn, how's it going?
It's going really well. How about you?
Pretty good. Lazy weekend. Just trying to shake off what's left of Christmas holidays. You know how it is. You know, you go back and you're just like, ugh. But yeah, we're doing good. Happy to be talking about the 2021 and what it's going to be like. Putting 2020 behind us. Obviously a fairly ratchet year. We're going to dive right in with this new year and new music. We're 2 weeks in. We haven't had really a truly massive release yet, but we're going to talk about some of the bigger releases that are expected for the year. 2020 was a really good year for music, despite all of, it just generally not being a good year for humanity. So let's see kind of what 2021 has in store for us. So I think the first place to start here is with Drake. There's been talk of the album Certified Lover Boy coming out for a bit. If we're going by what he said in the press, it should be dropped. In fact, it may even drop as we release this episode. We're doing this a couple weeks in at this point. So first of all, do we think that's going to happen, or is this going to be the hip hop cyberpunk?
It's definitely going to happen. Drake has been one of the most consistent artists, in his stratosphere for his generation. And we got the teaser. He put a lot of thought into what's going on. He kind of tested his metal a little bit with last year's Dark Lane demo tapes, got a lay of the land, and I think he's going to give us a lot more video kind of work on this. We got the really strong single with Lil Durk, Laugh Now, Cry Later, so I think he's really prepared going into this album.
Is Drake still the biggest artist in the world?
Yes, next question.
Does he have anything left to prove? Alphonse Pierre from Pitchfork, he was talking about, the video, the trailer and all that kind of stuff, and he feels he's gearing up for an album that is meant to cement legacy and, attack that and be big. Does he have anything left to prove? And where, if there is a proving ground, where does it lie with him? It certainly can't be from a units moved standpoint.
So I think with the whole Drake, does he have anything left to prove, is a very kind of reactionary take. And I think a lot of people kind of feel he does, but I think it's very much in the moment and not looking at the canonization of, his bodies of work, the figures and the numbers he smashed, and the way he's been able to maintain his relevancy. Because I think a lot of people are like, well, he doesn't have this, he doesn't have a classic album, or, he's not better than these people, but it's like...
He's got a classic album. He absolutely has one that is influenced... Take Care, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would agree that Take Care is that album, but I think there's a lot of... It's just easy with the internet every day to have very, hot takes and everything. There's not a lot of room for nuance. There's not a lot of room to discuss albums as they are. It's more so, is this album good or is it bad? Is it hot? Is it trash? And because those are very polarizing statements and everyone can latch on to one of those and really, kind of go on and on about that, and it works better for the internet because it's not, not enough to say, oh, well, this album had some good stuff, it had some weak sides, but overall it's going to be, a really well remembered album. I think with Drake, who else has had this? He's entering his second, maybe possibly third decade in this, kind of coming into the game in 2009 as a change. He's come from the blog era to when album sales mattered, and he was selling albums in that era, and now he is, the undisputed streaming king. So I don't think there's really too much left for him to kind of prove. I think he might feel that there is, and I think, some fans might argue that, he hasn't checked certain boxes, but I think, historically, you're going to be able to look back at his career and you can't sow any doubt.
Yeah, I think the problem is he's got a target on his head because he's the biggest artist in the world, and I do agree this idea of there being no nuance for what it is. This is kind of why, and I think on this list of people we're going to go through, you're going to see that as well, because there's some other luminaries on it, and I think anything is, at this point, it would be self-imposed, and I think he's probably looking at his legacy, because, you can't, see, the problem is when you start looking at things from a a unit sold and all that kind of situation, is that you're not really looking at, like, okay, let's say Drake put out the best album of his career, but it didn't sell as many albums. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't have the streaming numbers. So like, how would how would people, they being, you know, the music press and fans to that extent, evaluate that?
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of. I think, you know, this might be primarily a hip hop thing, but the idea of evaluating something, you know, from a unit's perspective doesn't really make any sense to me. And I don't think it's a great way to evaluate art, but it's one of the few metrics that we really have to kind of get a consensus of something. And I think people, especially in this new social media era, are really leaning into that in the way that they were doing in the you know, the post Tupac era, when he was bragging about his, you know, platinum records or whatever, and you know, Jay-Z kind of took that to a further extent, and you know, Kanye, and so on and so forth. But it's one of the only like kind of objective meters to measure music in, because everything else is just consensus and personal feelings and subjectivity.
It's funny too, because if Tupac had sold less like units of All Eyes on Me, would that have made it not one of the greatest hip hop albums of all time?
I mean, I wouldn't call it one of the greatest hip hop albums of all time, but I think I can kind of see some meaning in what you're saying there.
Which one are you saying is better than All Eyes on Me?
Like, where should I start? Like, should I go like 1 to 10 or 10 to 1 or 25?
You don't think that album ranks?
I do not like Tupac.
That's
as a rapper.
Okay, so first of all, I am surprised. Second of all, this was my because I was a heavy like into the Notorious B.I.G. camp. So for me, he was spitting off. I'm like, this guy off the cuff kills Tupac, but I think Tupac with a pen is better. Okay, so you are not making an objective opinion about whether or not All Eyes on Me is one of the best hip hop albums of all time.
I'm making an objective opinion on his rhyme schemes, and his flows aren't great. And for me, if I'm listening to rap, like, I want to hear someone to do it in a way that's, you know, you get the Tupac criticism of Hennessy and Enemies, and that's a lot of what it sounds like to me.
Okay, so I partially agree with you. I mean, like, again, I had to be I had to grow into Tupac, whereas like I was like, my feet were firmly entrenched in the East Coast sound.
For me, I'm not like, it's not like a West Coast or East Coast bias, because Tupac is from New York, Tupac is from Baltimore, and you know, he transplanted himself there. I think as a figure, he's a really important figure, and I know this is sidetracking the conversation.
That's fine. That's what we're here for.
I just don't think, like, you know, like, he did put a lot of albums out, and I know I've sat with his music, and I just don't really understand it from a musical, you know, sphere. Like, I understand everything else, and I like, he's, you know, I think he's like an American royalty to me. Like, he is such a figurehead, and like, had lived such a crazy life, and you know, just seeped in American history. But as a rapper, if I'm just evaluating the music, it doesn't resonate with me.
I would say for me, it was just a little bit more of, there is, like, especially at that time, there's a West Coast sound. It's what I preferred. Was the more of the East Coast situation, sample heavy, the more direct boom bap style, whereas, you know, I wasn't as into, you know, the G-funk, planet rock, electronic influence stuff, and I kind of grew into that from there. But that's here nor there. Interesting to find out stuff you never knew about your co-host and friends. So here's what I want to do. I want to move on to Pusha T, the opposite of Drake, the anti-Drake, if you will. He's supposed to be putting out an album now. The rumor, and not the rumor, is it largely sound from through interviews that he's had and conversations he's had. It sounds like Kanye West and the Neptunes are almost completely producing the new Pusha T album. How do we feel about this?
I mean, that's kind of like the dream. That's when you know, are a fan of the Clips, and you know, recognize their greatness, and you are a fan of early Kanye, and you recognize his greatness, or whatever period Kanye. And this is like kind of what you've always wanted. And you know, Daytona was really well received. It was a great album. So this should be like the album that I think like is the Pusha T solo album that, like, you know, maybe Daytona's that album right now, but I think this could overtake that and eclipse it.
Yeah, because if you love Clips, then you know what I mean, and then you love, like, it's like if you could combine like that more raw energy of the Clips with the more, you know, deft production of like Daytona, like, you know, that's where you want to be, you know what I mean? Like, that's, it sounds fantastic. And I think that I mean, for Pusha T, like, it's a lot. I don't think he's restrained by the same ridiculous things that Drake is, because Drake is just so high level and so like pop friendly, and you know, Pusha T gets to make albums that are defined by their artfulness and their rhymes.
So I think like Pusha T has some freedom at this. Kind of no matter what he does, he's gonna put out an album that's well received, and he's not gonna really miss the mark. I don't know that he's going to change anything. Like, I think we're gonna, you know, we kind of know generally what the album that we're gonna get is. We're gonna get some death-defying coke rhymes, which is what we want from him.
Yes.
We're gonna get some, you know, amazing spirited production from the Neptunes, from Kanye, some sparseness. For me, like I don't know what else. He has a kind of a similar situation with Drake to me, where they both, we know what we're gonna get from them, and we're rarely surprised. And I think most of the time, depending on what camp you fall in, you're, you know, happy with it. So I wonder, like, you know, is there anything Pusha T could do at this point in his career that is going to set him apart or bring his music to a wider audience? Like, you know, is there anything that he can do to, you know, break the mold a little bit?
I think for both of these artists, and I mean, Charlemagne the God was saying, you know, for Drake, he feels his season is over. You know what I mean? That I don't know if I necessarily believe that, just because of how Drake spikes the vein of popular music. You know what I mean? Like, he's got that cheat code for it.
Yeah, I feel like that's almost like a reductionist understanding of Drake and his influence. And I think that it's easy to kind of do that once, you know, you get to the level of Drake where you're on top for so long, and people are kind of like, you know, they give you your 2 or 3 or 4 year run, and then they kind of turn on you. You know, the general consensus kind of like spins a little bit. So I think that's where Drake, the place that Drake inhabits in a lot of people's minds. To say that like his season is over, like, doesn't really take into account the sounds that people are doing now and the way that Drake is able to adapt to the current climate at any time.
And it hasn't really moved past, like music hasn't really moved past where Drake is. You know what I mean? Like, it's not.
And Drake's always moving to where music is, if he ever,
Yeah.
you know, is behind it at any point. Like, he's quick to kind of fill those gaps.
And he's smart with collaborations too. Like, he understands who, I mean, like, for example, working with Heady One is an example of that, where he understands music from a higher level. I think in Pusha T's situation, it's a matter of how experimental, and maybe to Drake to an extent as well, is how experimental are they willing to go with their sound.
But then, like, how do you contrast them? Because I think Pusha T's sound, if you go back to the clips, you go back to Hell Hath No Fury, and like, that sound is super experimental, and it still sounds, you know, new and exciting and fresh, even like, you know, this many years later.
I wouldn't say there's a lot of sonic difference, but I don't mean that in a as a like a pejorative. I think that like Pusha T's albums have built on top of each other very well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's just about how, like, when I say experimental, is like, how are they willing to deviate from the path they're on?
Yeah, and I'd say in Pusha T's case that I would go firmly no, and in Drake's case, I think because he's experimented so much, you expect it at this point, so it doesn't really ring off the same. Maybe the first time you heard him do like a UK funky house track, or, you know, you heard him do a drill flow, or, you know, kind of grime adjacent stuff, like, you were kind of, you know, people were like, oh, what is this? And now you kind of expect him to kind of veer off in all these different ways. So I think that part doesn't really excite people in the same way that it used to.
That is true. I think that people, because of his mainstream acceptance, don't look at that there is risk taking. I think what they do is they use it more as an excuse to make fun of Drake if it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
But the experiment is there, you know what I mean? Like, at some point, the ability to just try different things is super fucking important, because you could be releasing the same album over and over again.
Like, what do you think Pusha could do to increase his profile, like, outside of this whole Drake beef? Because I think their names are tied together, and it's funny that they're, you know, on this list, like, one after another.
Yes, and it's that wasn't even, well, it was a choice, because I definitely made that comment coming into it. I think like for Pusha T, I'm just wondering, what does it look like? Because I still feel, and tell me if this isn't fair, he's a kind of a guy who has one foot still in the streets and one foot in the studio.
I think that's what you get through his music. I don't know that to be necessarily
Do you think that's do you
true.
think that's a calculation? Like,
I think it's a calculation. I think it's like a look. You know, we saw when his manager went down for, you know, the major investigation, stuff like that. I think Pusha T is, you know, pretty firmly like he's in the music business and he's good at that, and he's also good at recalling things and giving you stories that still give you that edge and give you that feeling.
then I would say is how is he expanding his narrative is the question. You know what I mean? That's the big thing.
And I don't think he will. And I don't think necessarily he needs to. Like, I would like to see it, but like, you know, we kind of know what Pusha T is and we know what he brings to the table, and he's really good at that. And I think that's where he feels most comfort at. Like, we've heard not too much, you know, variation from even going back to like 1999's The Funeral to, you know, Daytona. It's been kind of consistent and people like that consistency. And I don't know if there's more like kind of stories or angles for him to tap into that I've heard him, like, you know, vary into throughout his career.
Well, then do you think that the wider idea for him then is more along this, you know, running good music type situation? Like, is it more does it more lie in business rather than putting out an album every so often?
I think so. Like, you know, him getting into sneakers with Adidas, and, you know, he kind of previously had a foray into clothes with Play Clothes. So I think it'll be more just based on him, yeah, kind of being like a like getting more into the record business and signing new acts and expanding on that side.
Because I think the artists who kind of hit a narrative wall understand that. You know what I mean? Like, I can see Drake putting out music for much longer, right? Whereas Pusha T, I could see him maybe just moving into more of a business situation, because I don't know because you were talking about the experimentation with Drake. You know what I mean? He takes risks. He's about embracing new music, whereas Pusha T feels a little bit more like, I think from a pure hip hop standpoint, you know, Pusha T really embraces it. But I also don't think I think you can be mired in genre at that point.
Yeah, but I think there's a form of hip hop listener and fan, you know, even align with those kind of purists that really appreciate that. And, you know, we kind of look to like a Freddie Gibbs, and I would kind of put them side by side a little bit in genre and in like tone and timbre. And I think that we could get like, you know, Pusha T kind of aging up. Like, he's already up there, right? He must be early 40s or mid 40s or something like that. So I think we're going to kind of see him, you know, start to give us kind of one verse or two verse a year, or maybe kind of give some more reflections on his time as he ages out a little bit.
I want to talk about Lana Del Rey. Needless to say, 2020 was an interesting year for Lana. She said some dumb shit and got in some heat. Meanwhile, her album Chemtrails Over the Country Club was due to drop, but was delayed because of COVID. And then since then, she said it's March 2021 is looking, you know, is the supposed time it's supposed to be coming out. First off, do you think that the idea of COVID being an issue was an excuse, and that she wanted to like distance herself from the comments?
With the internet, people kind of harp on something for one day, or you know a couple of days, or sometimes it follows you around for months. I think if you can kind of get out of that, you can avoid those narratives. And like, yes, it'll come back to haunt her a little bit, and people will still get some jokes off at her expense, but she just created enough of a gap between her comments and what people were saying about her, you know, partner, and whatever. And when she drops this music, so I think it'll have enough space for her. I just wonder, like, you know, she hasn't really had the same impact, I don't think, in a long time.
Well, that's the big thing, is like, I don't really know where she, like, I think she's kind of a mercurial artist as it is anyways, so like I kind of don't understand where she fits into the pop music landscape as it is. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if, I'm always wondering why people make albums, especially in like, it's more genre specifically, like hip hop. I always wonder why people are still making albums when they apparently, you know, when they clearly want to be getting out into the more business situation, like that kind of thing. But like with her, it's more like, where is she fitting in popular music, and how does she fit, and like, what is her goal with putting out albums? Is it to just be still relevant, or is it like artistic expression? So, you know what I mean? Like, I that for me is kind of what I'm always thinking with her. I don't know what the end game is. I don't know what the point is, because for a lot of these people, it's not just about like I got to put out an album for the sake of expression. It's more like this is what I do, so I put out albums. You know what I mean?
Well, I would say like, you know, Norman fucking Rockwell in 2019 was, I thought it was a fantastic album, and I found
It was
it to be
good.
like a return to form for her. Like it reminded me of like, you know, Born to Die and like her earlier stuff. So I could see if she could kind of deliver at that level again. But she's also like, I can kind of see Taylor Swift wading into some of her space that she occupied in sonically on like between her two albums. So I wonder how she kind of returns and what she's going to play with stylistically, because she's always been really good at the Americana and, you know, using pop as a lens to explore Americana. And I think we're seeing Taylor wade into that water a little bit.
Yeah, it's just like a difference. Like I feel with Taylor Swift, there's a romanticism, you know what I mean, which can manifest itself as sadness or whatever. With Lana Del Rey, it feels like a little bit more rooted in cynicism. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like cynicism and like melancholy a lot.
Yeah, 100%. Which is funny because there's a through line between the two via Jack Antonoff, which is interesting. So I'm like wondering, is Jack Antonoff setting himself up for another big year? Because although, you know, Aaron Desmer was on, you know, Folklore and Evermore, Jack Antonoff was still a part of it, and I'm wondering, you know, is he? I mean, this guy's always in the mix.
Yeah, he's always kind of around, right?
Yeah, which is why I think that, you know, inevitably, if he's involved, it will have enough pop sensibility to hang around, you know, in the conversation.
Yeah, and I think like you have those kind of backline producers who are not really in the eyes of fans, and so you have to kind of know music to kind of follow their careers, but they can have like really quiet influences on the way pop music goes, and I think he's kind of going to be one of those people. But do you think he's going to do his own stuff next year, or you think Taylor will drop more? Because I think Taylor's going to give us a break for a good amount of time at this point.
Rumors of a third one of those albums coming out, although it's been denied. I feel like she may give you a break. I just like, as again with Taylor Swift, I just wonder, I just want to make sure it's not even make sure, because that's not fair. She's allowed to do whatever the fuck she wants. I love the music she's making right now, and if that's two albums that exist in that bubble or era, if you will, then cool, because they're objectively great and I will always listen to them. I mean, I don't know, is Jack Antonoff going to get into like Taylor Swift is probably going to end up taking a break. I'm surprised she released that much music anyways in such a short period of time. But, I mean, she also at the same time had a lot of time to do it. So, Jack Antonoff, I don't know when this guy is going to start getting back into his own stuff. But, I mean, he's a talent. And I think that in terms of the way pop music plays out per year, Jack Antonoff generally has a say in the overall discussion.
Yeah, and I think it'll continue for a while like that.
I want to talk about War on Drugs. The War on Drugs, first of all, one of my personal favorite bands. They're fantastic. They've been called one of the greatest bands of 2010s, if not, and the best live band of a generation. However, in an interview with Stereogum, Adam Granduciel, who's the lead singer, said that he felt the album was like 80% done over the pandemic, but like when he looked at it, he kind of realized it's only 40% done. So he says one should be dropping this year, and he says there's actually going to be enough music to probably add another non-War on Drugs project to it. Is music yearning for a big rock album? Because it feels like we haven't had one in forever.
Yeah, I think that like there's always space for that. Would you say, you know, what would you say was the biggest rock album we got last year?
The Flaming Lips album. Well, I mean, I enjoy like the Bob Dylan album was like objectively a great great music, but like it just wasn't for me. But I mean, that's I think what people would say. I mean, if you're calling that rock, that would be the one that was higher up on the list last year. The Flaming Lips, American Head, that album was another one that people, you know, were talking about, that reviewed well. That was one of the more legacy alternative bands, if you will, that put out music, and it was objectively really, really good. But I'm wondering if one of the more modern heavyweights coming out, and wonder what that's going to be like. War on Drugs being probably one of the biggest ones around currently. So, I mean, I'd be really interested in seeing what comes out, and I do think we're yearning for, you know, a really good rock album, because I just don't think one is like, I think good albums have come out and all that kind of stuff. But I just don't. I'm talking about Arcade Fire is supposed to put out an album this year too. It'd be
Yeah.
really awesome if they put out a great album. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of band I'm talking about, where when they release something, it's notable and everyone has to pay attention to what it is. And there's less of those in music today, obviously.
I can't remember if did you listen to the Coldplay album last year?
No, I didn't listen to the Coldplay album last year. Can I be honest with you?
Yes. Are you gonna tell me you don't like Coldplay?
I'm gonna tell you I like. I'm gonna tell you I like one. I'm gonna tell you I like one Coldplay album, and it's
Is it a rush of blood to the head, or
it is.
Okay,
it's,
perfect.
It, like so that album.
That's a good pick.
That's an all-time like that album. People can at me all they want. I mean, even the first album too. It's just like, okay, what I liked is about the first Coldplay album is that they were like, Chris Martin was like, he was talking about Yellow, and he was like, I was just trying to make a My Bloody Valentine song, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I like that. I like that he just admitted what it was. So I think that album has some. The problem is those albums were released like it's kind of a like post Britpop or tail end of Britpop, post Britpop situation.
Yeah.
So I mean, the first two albums, like A Rush of Blood to the Head, is objectively a great album, and it's an all-time album. And if you were to talk about the best releases of that time period, that's among them.
Yeah.
So subsequently, I've listened. The last one was the only one I haven't listened to.
I think it's been a while, and I brought up Coldplay just to say, like, to have those bands that are like the band of the moment.
Yeah, like Coldplay when they were dropping albums would like that, like those were big albums, right?
Because like I wouldn't would you call Imagine Dragons like the band of the moment?
No, they're
at
too
any
shitty.
time? Yeah, like I don't know, like they're just like not. I don't know. I'm not listening to them, and I guess a lot of people are because they're selling probably a lot of music, but. There's been a while since there's been a band that like everyone can kind of point to and be like, we all like this and we all enjoy this. And I can't think of who it was last, like recently.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's kind of War on Drugs, because like their 2017 album, critically acclaimed, did very well. It's kind of what cemented them, that band of the decade type situation. And like again, the Arcade Fire is about to release an album. They're not that anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It'd be great if they put out good music, but I mean, even with War on Drugs, like their last album was in 2017. So in terms of like, if you're a fan, it's going to be good. But in terms of like it being like they're the last opportunity, I think now, unless some other band was to come back or something, a notable band to drop an album coming up next year. Unless Radiohead has one fucking planned or something. But even then, theirs is more, I feel like bands, what happens is, bands or hip-hop artists or anybody like that, what it happens, like, To Live Quietly would be an example. When they put out music, you're doing it for your fans, right? You're not doing it it's not an imperialist move. It's more like, you have fans, you love your fans, you love making music, you're making stuff for your fans, and hopefully you pick up some new people along the way.
Yeah, it's very, like, core audience at that level, right? When you've done the thing, you've made the music to connect, you've kind of hit your peak, and then you kind of start rolling the other way down the hill where it's, hey, the tours are starting to get smaller, you might put out one more album that gets a little bit of critical acclaim, but I think the critics kind of start leaving you at that point, and then you're just making music for your core audience and touring for your core audience, and you can kind of like kick back at that point because you've done the things that there were to do.
Yes, I fear that War on Drugs is moving into that, because even though, like, you need to be putting out music on a regular basis now. It's like there's not too many artists that are above it. So I worry that they have now moved into that realm where they're just putting it out and it's for their fans and there's no expansion from there. But that can be an inevitability. So
would you not say that rock is one of the genres that, like, well, it's not at the forefront right now. It's one of the genres that, you're afforded more time between releases. It's not like pop where you need to be constantly like hitting kids over the face with it or, doing TikToks or whatever. Like, rock is a genre that I think like it deserves time, it deserves like space, and you're not harping to get like new albums from people because like people I think still kind of expect like time to be taken between albums.
Well, I think that's a good point. In fact, that's kind of in my head why I started talking, then I stopped and was like, well, this, but like, like, because in my head, I'm wondering, I'm asking myself the question, has hip hop and its dominance at the top changed the way we perceive the rock music cycle? So now am I just, because remember back in the day bands used to release stuff all the time. Led Zeppelin released 3 albums in like fucking 14 months.
Yeah.
Like Zeppelin 1, 2, and 3 came all fucking out, right? So
But
like
I feel
this
like that's also a product of the time too, right? Like it's
100%.
kind of like
Oh,
you're
absolutely.
like fast life, on the road doing shows, like
Yeah.
getting to it, you feeling the magic, and you kind of like
But this is kind of what I'm playing with is like so I'm in my head I'm like back in the day they used to do that all the time, but then as it moved forward they did that less. So in my like I think that is the default opinion for me, what you're saying, that yes there's a perception that it takes longer, but I'm just wondering from like a social and artistic point of view if people are getting a little bit more like restless and ADD about it.
I think it's not just hip hop's influence, because I think it's just the time period of now. Like it's very much an attention span economy. So if you're not retaining attention and you're like a legacy band, you're fine. But if you're not a legacy band, you're working every second to chip away to get some real estate, so then you can kind of establish yourself. And
Yes, and I'm gonna yes, you're completely correct. It's not a hip hop thing. It's a content thing. It's this idea of content now and how often content has to come out. So like that's for me what it is now that I really look at it.
yeah, because we're just, everything is driven by content. Everything is content now. Like content is king. It's the way that brands look at things. It's the way that, like, we engage with the advertisers, we engage with social media, we engage with our friends. Like everything is driven by, putting out content. Like that's what even like Spotify is kind of geared towards that with.
It's the main line, you know what I mean? That's how they mainline music right into your veins.
Yeah, like how many monthly listeners does this band have? What does that say about them? How much, all the numbers are upfront to hear and to see. And that kind of gives you assign value through that.
So how that culture affects a band like War on Drugs, I mean, we've seen it in the 2000s. I think it's only ramping up more in the 2010s. I mean, we've seen it every year since really social media and even especially with the music industry, since streaming has really kind of pushed it forward. So we'll see how that works. I want to talk about Rihanna. So Rihanna to me doesn't seem overly concerned about rushing an album out. She put out some feelers with that Party Next Door joint. Believe It. I think it was for Party Next Door Mobile. She said she was working on a reggae album, but nothing has materialized or, updated yet. Like there's no understanding of when whatever may come out. I mean, do you think her headspace is more fixated on the business endeavors? She seems like someone that for a prime candidate for that.
Yeah, I think so. Like, she's reached her heights. She is one of the biggest pop stars on the planet. She's now, firmly in with Fenty. She has a skincare line. She has a high tier fashion line. She's jet setting. She pops up on camera every once in a while. I like the idea of her returning to music. She's had a very interesting career, and she has just kind of leveled up every single time. From the Rated R era. I'm excited for her to put out new music. I get it. Like, I get the press ring for new music from her, or whatever the meme might be about her releasing new music. But I'm not, like, breaking my neck over it. Like, it's going to come when it's going to come, and there's not really too much more that you can say at that point, at least to me.
Like, it just doesn't... Listen, she puts out good albums. Like, she's great, and she's, been high up in the pop music situation. It just, her dropping an album at this point isn't like an event anymore. Like, she's not Taylor Swift or Beyonce.
You don't think so?
Like that.
No. I think she's definitely there 100%.
I definitely don't think she's at the Beyonce level. Like, Beyonce putting out an album is...
If she's not... I think this album's going to be bigger than a Beyonce release, because Rhea has her hardcore stance too, and I'd say she's firmly in between both those artists, because her last album was such a huge moment. She put so much into visuals. She, is into acting. She is everywhere. And I think this album is going to be a huge moment. Like, the internet's going to shut down, because the internet shuts down when Rihanna does anything.
I will concede the positioning. I will not concede on what the new album is going to be like. I think it's there's too much wishy-wash with it. Like, okay, here's the question. Do you think that if it were to happen, it's going to be a surprise release, or it's something she ramps up on?
That I can't really tell you that. I don't know. I think she will kind of just drop it. I don't know if she's gonna drop it with a video or do like a whole movie. Like she could do any of those type things because like that's what level her artistic kind of like taste is and her merit. So I think I'm kind of assuming we'll get a surprise album from her because of all the anticipation build up. So I think she's just gonna drop it one day and everyone's gonna just freak out.
I think that would be the smart move.
Yeah, like either way, if she leads into it with the single, like that single is going to be everywhere. You're not going to be able to escape it, especially her playing with Caribbean sounds, you know, working with Party, working with like a few different acts from across from the islands. Like I think Coffee's writing on there, or Coffee's going to be featured. So I'm just super excited for whatever this is going to be because I think it's going to be pretty inescapable.
See, I think given what she's trying to do, I mean, like, because hearing from multiple sources that she's, you know, really playing with island stuff and reggae. I think what she has the opportunity to do is release her best album.
I think
an artistic standpoint.
Yeah, I think she could really go lean heavy into her roots and play with those sounds and kind of elevate it from, you know, where dance hall's kind of been at and been viewed lately. I think, like, you know, she has the ability to make an album that kind of signals a return and like is going to elevate the people who are featured on it. Like I think, you know, Coffee's already a rising star, but you know, depending on, you know, how much writing she does or how much she's on it, you know, how much Party's on it or how much writing he does, like it's gonna really set the tone.
I want talk about, let's go right into Beyonce then.
Okay.
Just because we were talking about it. So Beyonce, and I think, and as I'm playing with what you were saying, I'm wondering if the terrible, and I don't know if you're going to call it terrible, but the Carter's album, the Jay-Z, the last thing she did, I mean, it just was boring.
I think, yeah.
That may have taken a little of the sheen off, maybe not.
I think maybe a little bit like that. I wouldn't say it's a terrible album. I would just say it's pretty forgettable and it's not really, you know, like the video work behind it was good. There's like a few songs, but it's mostly like I don't hear people talking about it too much. And with Beyonce, like, everyone kind of blames Jay-Z for that, which I think is hilarious. But like I think you got to talk about Homecoming, which, you know, came out in 2019 on Netflix and was just like a phenomenal piece of art. Like a live album dropped with it. She has a $60 million deal with Netflix to do 3 different projects. I think we're going to see one, if not 2 of those projects this year. Then she kind of goes into the Lion King era, does the Lion King soundtrack, which I thought was phenomenal. Like The Gift, she starts playing with, you know, Afrobeat, different artists from the continent.
They really made it good. Like they could have done, like they could have tried to just do this like kind of whitewashed Tim Cook and Elton, but they just went right to, you know, playing with African music and just really going for it. And I think it was really good. Just what they were, it's like the soundtrack was fantastic.
And then we got Black is King, and that was another, you know, a great body of work. And she, you know, somehow did that with Disney in spite of having this Netflix deal. And, you know, she has all these people involved in it, different like artists, American, African, like a musical film, like a visual album. And that, you know, takes up a lot of like, people are really excited about it. You know, it's based on what she did with The Lion King. And I think it's like another like level where like, you know, she's a filmmaker now. Like she has elevated herself so much and like has done so many great bodies of work that this is just like another notch in it.
I think her challenge is going to be following up how good Lemonade was. Because for me, that is head and shoulders better than anything she's ever. Not that anything she's done is not before. Like her body of work is fantastic, but I felt that album was just so fucking good. Just who she had on it, the songs, the sonic exploration, like more like experimenting herself and really kind of just being so like candid and vulnerable with the music in it. Like for me, I'm like that. This is an all time great album. We're gonna look at this album in hindsight as something very special.
Yeah, I think so. I think like she's gonna get up there again. So yeah, I think she can kind of return to that. Like, we've watched her do this so much since then. So
This is the best. For me, this is the best Beyonce period that we're in right now.
the era we're in, you say?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, it's like she's someone who has like had a lot of really great eras. So like, yeah, like she's kind of reinvented herself 3 or 4 times, but like just her art, her like the visuals that accompany everything, like the Lemonade visuals were amazing. So yeah, I'm excited for where she wants to go next.
One of the big ones on that's out there right now is Frank Ocean. Last seen in 2016. There's talk that he's going to put out more. There's talk that he's going to put out more work. There's talk about what's going to happen, but everything is very tight-lipped in the Frank Ocean camp. But Frank Ocean is one of our great artists. We totally need him to put out some stuff.
Yeah, I don't doubt that we'll see something from him this year. He is another artist who, has come into music, established himself. I wouldn't say quickly because, it took years for him to get to where he was. He is treasured in people's hearts. He gave us, kind of 2 albums in 2016 and then kind of blinked out. And then we got, like, I think a couple features since then. Like, he gave us that visual album, Endless, which I still kind of haven't heard the whole thing of. But I would love for another Frank Ocean album this year, and I like that he's afforded himself space. Like, he's not all online on Instagram or Twitter. Like, he kind of pops in when he needs to. He really controls his output, and that's something I appreciate about him. So, like, I think he's going to take his time, and he's going to deliver us another really great project. And I think he's going to just hit those levels, and it's going to be another album that, like, is really treasured and remembered from him.
Everything he does turns to gold. I mean, like, he's just his taste and what he's and how he's able to like manifest it. I'm never not impressed at the things he does, and I think it's funny because he kind of eschews all this, that we're talking about today, just about like you got to put albums out fast. You know what I mean? There's attention spans and this kind of thing, and still, if he drops it, it would end inevitably one of the biggest releases of the entire year.
Yeah, like it's almost like he can do no wrong. I know some people kind of split on how they feel about Blonde or Channel Orange, or they kind of pick and choose, but he is undoubtedly one of the best writers of this era. He's undoubtedly one of its most creative thinkers, and he also, I like that he's like very anti this era, right? He's not doing the things that you're supposed to do within this era. He's not giving us like 10 features a year, and you could kind of like compare him, to The Weeknd in a lot of ways, because they kind of entered in the public consciousness at the same time, but they've gone very different ways, where The Weeknd's still maintaining a level of creativity, but Frank Ocean has become kind of more mysterious than how, like, how The Weeknd was when we were introduced to him. So I think that's a really interesting thing too, because like Frank Ocean just pops up like and does these shows, and people are like, oh, like he's wearing headphones, he's like, not giving you exactly what you thought you'd get from a show, but people are just losing their minds over it.
What about Top Dog Entertainment?
So I think Top Dog is really interesting because we've heard murmurs from the camp of unhappiness for, I think, the last 2 or maybe even 3 years. We know SZA was kind of like trying to get her albums out, and every time a rumor kind of goes flying, they kind of quash it really fast. We had Dave Free, who's Kendrick's day-to-day manager, I believe, leave Top Dog. He was, I think, a VP there or something like that, and they've created PG Lang. I think it's with Warner, if I'm not mistaken, and I believe Georgia Smith and Kendrick's cousin Baby Keem are signed there. So there's like a little bit of a rupture. People were wondering if Kendrick was going to go there. They also like quashed those rumors. I think that was maybe in September that was kind of going around of 2020. So we've had Ab-Soul has said that he's going to put an album out this year. People have been expecting an album from Isaiah Rashad for a long time. I think he's another one where it's like he hasn't put an album out in a long time.
Not for a bit, yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see, because I think for a long time people would have called them the premier hip-hop label. And now we're kind of looking at it like, okay, where is Isaiah Rashad? Are we going to get new Schoolboy Q this year? how are they going to stack their releases, because they have a lot to put out this year, I would say.
And it can get contentious with releases too, just in terms of like where publicity is going and all this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And like where the label's efforts are. I know Good Music experiences that for sure. Like for example, Tiana Taylor's music not often is discussed as not getting the attention of its own label.
I wonder about that, right? Like, how are we going to space them out? Is like, is Ab-Soul going to get priority this year? Is he going to kind of ascend? But I think he's also a very niche artist. I really want an album from Isaiah Rashad this year.
He's really good. Like, his stuff is absolutely fantastic.
Super talented. And then, so we just got a single from SZA, so it looks like she's in an album cycle, and then Kendrick. And I wonder how Kendrick's going to kind of figure into this equation and what he's going to kind of deliver this year, because he's another one who's been, since 2017, his last, like, album, and then he did the Black Panther soundtrack.
Yeah. Let's talk Kendrick Lamar. Given the times and what's going on in the world, it kind of feels like we need a Kendrick Lamar album. For me, what I love about Kendrick Lamar is he doesn't seem to be an artist who's weighed down by industry pressures or the need for sales. Like, everything he does seems to be an artistic statement with obviously thought it put into it from a business standpoint. But I mean, like, To Pimp a Butterfly is a completely unconventional hip hop record that really, so like there was guts in putting that out, you know what I mean? And I like that that's what his kind of.
Yeah. I wonder, like, with Kendrick, like, do you think he'll kind of come out of nowhere and do it? Do you think he'll give us like a album rollout and some singles and stuff? He's also someone who just doesn't have anything left to prove, right?
Yeah, at this point, I don't know what this weighs into his head, but for him now, it's about like, where can I take art, and like, where in terms of the GOATs conversation am I going to live? I think, and I don't even know if that's something that weighs on him, but that is definitely the narrative that kind of surrounds him, just because, I mean, people have prolifically called him compared him to Tupac, which I don't think is a fair comparison. I'm sure that will make your eye twitch, because I think he's just a far better storyteller, which you can at me about that. But like, I think he has the chance to be one of the greatest of all time. If not, he already is.
Yeah, I think he's, like, without a doubt, one of the best, top 3 of this era.
What are those top 3?
I mean, we can have a separate podcast, so I can get out my top 3. But I think quickly, if I had to do it, I'd probably do Drake, Kendrick. I don't know if we're gonna consider them same era. Maybe I would do Kanye if we're gonna consider that an era, or if we're gonna go to a different era. You might put Travis up there, maybe not on the bar side, but just in terms of like impact in this era. There's a few different people I'd probably want to think of for my top 3.
Okay. I just wanted to get that out just because we were talking about it. I think he needs to put out an album. We got to hear it. You know what I mean? Like, like, this guy is fucking, like, he's one of the, and you don't like assessing these hot button terms, but he's definitely the voice of a generation of, of people. And I think that people look to him and what he's doing as, an important reflection of what's going on. And his music is just on another level, even if you didn't like Damn. I mean, like, what did you think about Damn?
Damn, I liked. Damn. I thought it was good. I liked it better than To Pimp a Butterfly.
It's more accessible. It's absolutely more accessible.
So I think I enjoyed the accessibility a little bit more. Like, Good Kid, Mad City is undoubtedly, like, one of my favorites. Probably one of my favorite albums ever. But yeah, I think Damn was a great album. He is someone who kind of always, like, reinvents himself a little bit. I think from what I've heard, the rumors were that this album was going to be like the rock-based album.
Interesting.
Which I think would be interesting for him to kind of play with those elements on there, because undoubtedly Good Kid, Mad City is a G-Funk album.
Yeah.
To Pimp a Butterfly is more jazz influence. Damn, I don't know exactly how I would nail down the influence for that. I don't know. What would you say? How would you describe
for
that
Damn,
album?
that's more of a, I mean, it's kind of a straight up pop record, to be like the way it's crafted. Like, the way it's crafted. You know what I mean? Like, it's very.
Yeah, there's a lot more.
Yeah, it's like that. Those kind of like songs like Humble and DNA. Like, these are, especially Humble. Like, it's a banger. You know what I mean? Like, it has swagger, and it's really. I think what happened is that he made that G-Funk album that quintessential West Coast sounding album with Good Kid, Mad City, which is understandable because that's about him growing up. So he probably would want to immerse it in the, especially, Dre's involvement in the sounds of his youth, from a form equals content kind of. To Pimp a Butterfly is a jazz record, you know what I mean? Like the hip hop equivalent of a jazz record with a couple songs in there that, you could get in there, like King Kunta, like songs that are would consider a little bit more radio friendly bangers, what you will. But I think with Damn, I think it was a reaction to his own album that he put out was a little bit more abstract, so he wanted to do something a little bit more straight up with some swagger, which is totally cool, right? And play with sounds that are less definitively West Coast, if you will. Next, I want to get into your favorite rapper, J. Cole.
J. Cole. So we've seen him in the studio now, and he's announced the fall off for a while now. He gave us, I think, a couple weeks ago, he wrote down 3 albums, and the fall off being the 3rd, and we don't know if they're albums or they're singles or whatever. I think he teased that on Instagram. So it looks like he has like a plan for what he wants to do this year. So it's gonna be interesting to see kind of where he goes and what he kind of turns into, and where he's at in his career and what he's gonna give us.
I'm gonna ask a couple questions here. One, you often skirt this question. Do you hate J. Cole?
No, I don't hate J. Cole. Like I enjoy J. Cole's like place in the game. Do I want to listen to his albums? That's a different question. Like I get it. I get him. He's doing something. He's also someone who's in a tricky position because he exists in this weird era where he's between Kendrick and Drake, and J. Cole does the girls records. Drake is better at doing those records. He tries to do the deep records. Kendrick is better at doing the deep records. He's not my favorite producer. I don't think he's the best producer. I don't think he should be producing all his own music, but he, is in this niche where he's heavily debated. People are always wondering if he has a classic album or if there's a classic in him. I would say he doesn't have a classic record yet. He's an important figure. He's, someone I respect. I don't think he is the best rapper of his contemporaries. He's just kind of there. He's just J. Cole.
I think for me, in terms of like where he is with his contemporaries, he's probably a better spitter, like just spitting. Like he doesn't have the artfulness of Kendrick Lamar, like in terms of what he's saying. Like what Kendrick Lamar uses, like every word for him is, it's dipped in expression, but he can't write pop song like Drake can. But in terms of his technical rapping ability, he can weave in and out, probably up there with the better ones, but it's not it. But it's like, what is the substance to it? And that would be the issue for me, and that's why he doesn't have a classic album yet.
Yeah, and I kind of, every album I see from J. Cole, I'm like, oh, maybe this is the one. Like I was like, okay, maybe 2014's Forest Hill Drive is going to be that album. Or maybe it's going to be, whatever the surprise album after that was. Or maybe it's going to be KOT. And I'm keep kind of coming to him and hoping for something and kind of walking away disappointed. He's never really just had that X factor to me that, I'm like, oh, this is why I need J. Cole or need to, go back. I don't find myself revisiting his music too often. And, he's someone I really want to like. He's a rapper that I'm like, oh, I really think I want to be, a fan of this person. And I never really could get there.
Because I feel like if he said super dope shit, you know what I mean? If with his with the speed and his ability, there's no stopping him. You know what I mean? Whereas when I want you to tell me what the emotional impact of J. Cole's music is. That for me is how you would define it.
Yeah, and I think too, if he was clearly, the head of the pack or really good in his class, I think that would not be, there wouldn't be as much debate around him.
No, there wouldn't be, because he's technically good. Because Drake like people's assault on Drake as just like a straight up rapper is that he's not like a technically like gifted rapper in the traditional sense. But
I would say more with Drake, it's kind of like he does too much. Like he gives us too many different sides of him, and he doesn't like he's never given people like the rap album they want from him.
Yeah.
And then when he kind of did the rap album, then the ghostwriting allegations came out, so like that kind of changed the conversation on him. It's always kind of like they kind of want to pitch him as an outsider, even though he's not.
Well, yeah,
and,
he's definitely not a. Like but I think the marker has moved in terms of that discussion, right? Because like all those people who are trying to say that are judging Drake from a traditional hip hop sense, right? From a traditional rap sense. But now that like this isn't the mid '90s anymore, or even the early 2000s, like rap has ascended to the top of popular music. So now it's about his viability as pop, right? And Drake is part of that ascension. You know what I mean? So there's not really like for me, you can't really debate about it. It's just the things that people say is like, is Drake a better rapper than Ghostface Killah? You know what I mean? Like those are the kind of questions that like people, and it's like no, but that's not what he's supposed to be.
Yeah, it's not like it's like people have too many big ideas about Drake, and they kind of want to like find the Jay-Z's or whoever it is and be like, well, he's not them, so he's not good. But it's like he's far beyond so many people in rap, and he is really technically and really skilled rapper, and he's given us enough songs that we can kind of agree on that. So I think the debate with Drake is a little bit different. I think with Kendrick, it's like, is he palatable to the most amount of people? And I think people kind of like, you have an album like To Pimp a Butterfly, and he's doing really high concept art stuff. Sometimes he does the voices, and so people kind of want to write him off for that. Where I think from Cole, it's more his fans are saying that he is the best, but the consensus is that he is, boring or he's not quite there. And I think a lot of it is just in the way that he works, because he just really works in a very like singular, focus-minded thing where it's like, I did it all myself. And I think it's just so insular where like you need other ideas, you need other producers, you need other people kind of coming in the room and bring you fresh stuff. Because like, yes, you can make great works by yourself, and I think there's something like it's like a bit of a bragging behind that, but I don't think you make the best quality of work alone.
No, even if you're looking at someone like, look at Kanye West, he's the hip hop auteur, and he's bringing in that's the strength. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He acts as a band leader rather than just a rapper, which is why guys like Prince are good. You know what I mean?
And that's why I would say about like Cole, because like I think the Dreamville project, like with him at the helm, was one of my favorite projects.
Yeah, it's really great.
And it's like there's flashes, there's so much brilliance on there, and there's flashes of brilliance from him. So I think like if he kind of works in that like way, he could do so much more and reach such a bigger audience.
Well, he needs that. Like he needs what JID and like Cuz and like Baz have, which is J. Cole. J. Cole needs his guy. You know what I mean? He needs his guy or girl, the person that helps bring the best out of them, and then in turn that would help him bring out even more stuff from the the individuals, you know what I mean, the people who are part of Dreamville, because those Dreamville albums I fucking love. And also the individual Dreamville albums, like I love Baz, his albums are fucking fantastic. I love Cause, like JID, same idea. Like there's
Earth Gang,
like they're so good.
I think there's like a conversation to be had about J. Cole as a label head, and then it's like, obviously with Ibrahim, his manager, but like that might be the great hip hop label that we're all looking for. Ari Lennox, like Cause, Boz, Dreamville, like JID, like even bringing guys like Saba in on albums, like Buddy. We got some good work from like just tons of people like involved. And it just works really well, and like they're kind of tapping the right people, and we need more of that from J. Cole on an album. Yeah,
because I think that's what his natural gift is. Because people like the amount, regardless of what people say, the amount of respect he carries is very high.
He's like a very much a man of the people. Like he is, he did the Dollar in a Dream shows. He was showing up to fans' houses. He built such a narrative. He connects with his audience at such a high level that like we're not getting from a Kendrick necessarily. We're not going to get that from a Drake. Like there's something to be said, like J. Cole riding around New York on his bike, or J. Cole like out at protests, like marching with people, you know, not focusing it on himself, not centering himself, but just quietly being there and being important. So, you know, J. Cole is a great artist. I think that, like, you know, there's more to be heard from him, and I think he could be someone who matures into a better artist than he is now.
Absolutely. Also, like, just Dreamville's roster, I mean, the pure spitters on it, you know what I mean? Like, just the level of rapping that takes place on it in a modern context, you know, the modern look at hip hop. I mean, the only other one for me that really, where all the rappers are this good, is like Griselda.
Yeah, I would say so too, right? Like, and I think for a lot of time, like, TDE was in that conversation, but I think we're watching like these kind of like minor tiffs or label struggles or whatever, and we're kind of questioning it. Where like, it would, like, imagine like we got that TDE album that, like, you know, TDE gave us that Dreamville album. Like, imagine how
Oh my god, that would be. And they got, like, they have, there's a lot of diversity on the album too, from a musical on with them. TDE from a musical sense, you know, SZA brings things and Isaiah Rashad brings things, and I completely agree. Absolutely, that would be pretty incredible.
Like, even a Black Hippie album. Like, imagine we got that Black Hippie album that we've been promised.
Yeah, no, absolutely, that'd be fucking amazing. I want to talk Travis Scott. Talks of Utopia coming out. Where do you think he is going into 2021?
He is the biggest brand ever. Like, if you want to sell something, go through Travis Scott and he'll find a way to sell it. He has, you know, almost surpassed art in that way, where it's like he's doing brand deals with McDonald's, you know, he's selling pillows, he is selling, like, he has a new liquor company coming out, he, you know, PS5, like Nike, like whatever it is, just put Travis Scott in it and then put it on the internet and he will sell you Fortnite. Like, he'll do, like, he is just a brand through and through, and that makes him hard to touch. And then on the music side of things, he is really good at orchestrating and putting together sonic landscapes in a way that I don't think a lot of people can do.
Yeah, I mean, his talent is undeniable. And do you think he's a future hip-hop billionaire?
I think he's like, that's probably what his focus is. He's trying to find a way to get to a billion, and he's going to get there because, like, he has the rabid fan base. He, you know, gives back to them. He does the shows. He always is selling something. Like, there's no, and like, I don't think he's not like, I don't want to say this in a disrespectful way, but he doesn't really stand for anything in any like measurable way. So he's kind of like just this blank slate that really works to kind of, you know, express anything through. He's not too risque, but he's also a little bit like, you know, edgy. So he just like really works to kind of do that, and like that's what is going to make him probably a billionaire.
Do you think he ever says Republicans buy McDonald's too?
I mean, probably not in so many words, but he probably would say, like, let the Republicans rage too. Like, they everyone wants to rage.
Okay, so one of our final ones we're getting into is Adele. She sells so many albums, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, she's one of the best-selling artists of the last decade. When she's clicking, she's shattering records, 21 non-consecutive weeks at number one for 19, 25, 21, sold fucking like crazy. Is it 21? I can't remember the name of the damn record. Ton of hardware. She got a thank you letter from the goddamn Prime Minister for the economic contribution that her albums would bring. Like, for me, like, I feel like anything she puts out, if you're judging it from a statistical point of view, will be a disappointment, because I don't think she can sell that much anymore. I could be completely wrong, because it's just not because she is not talented enough, but just because those numbers are so insane, how you can't possibly always do those numbers.
Oh, no, she's going to do those numbers because, like, her fan base still buys CDs. Like, I don't know where they find CDs, but they buy CDs. And she's gonna also stream through the roof. Like, yeah, I don't know. Like, did she do a James Bond song? Because I'm sure she's gonna do another James Bond song. Like, she is just too massive.
What I'm saying is, like, some album she puts out is not going to, like, inevitably she will disappoint if you go by numbers, because she can't. That means like, you know what I mean? Like, she, like, sooner or later she can't just be judged on those, because at some point you're competing against yourself, and it's just so ridiculous. I'm more like, if she, like, now it has to be about the artistic situation for her.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I don't see a world in which she doesn't, like, you know, start breaking. Like, you know, when you see those records, and some of those records are kind of like those sports records where it's like, oh, the biggest artist to sell, like, you know, this on a Tuesday or whatever. Where it's kind of like, what does that even mean? But like, somehow they find these records and she's breaking them, and I think she is just going to, you know, sell, like, you know, 8 billion records. Like I guess, like, 21 went 17 times platinum in a bunch of countries, 8 times platinum in a bunch, and then, but 25 also went like, she's going like diamond, platinum every time. Like, I don't know. She's just gonna go crazy.
But what I mean is, if she only sold 15 million copies,
yeah,
you know what I mean? So, like, for her long-term discussion as an artist, it has to be like, because she's working with Raphael Saadiq, John Legend. I mean, there's definitely, you know, we're looking at building a more artful sound, right? Because right now, the songs are good. It's about her pipes, but I think there's a whole other situation she can move into.
Yeah, I think she's gonna start to experiment a little bit more on this.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm talking about, is really experimentation.
Yeah, but also, like, I don't want to say she's gonna play it safe, but I think she's gonna experiment, but in her own way where it's palatable.
Yeah, I mean, like, Raphael Saadiq is super fucking talented, right? Like, he's someone who can help craft, you know, a little bit, like, of a more different sound, right? And I think that's why him and John Legend are, like, kind of interesting together, like, just from a musical point of view. Because, you know what, I want to see, like, just some of the, like, Raphael Saadiq solo stuff drip into, like, some, like, more of the stuff he produces.
And I think we're gonna get that, and, like, I think she's gonna give us a little bit more traditional R&B elements on here.
Yeah,
but, like, you know, she has that really powerful voice, and I don't know, she's just gonna give us, like, it's another one of those where it's like, you're not gonna be able to escape it when it comes out.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not even affected by the radio anymore in my entire life, because you were walking through stores, you were walking through everything, and, you know, that what's that song? I can't even remember. They all blur into each other. I mean, I must admit, I'm not the biggest Adele fan, but I mean, I'm trying to think of anybody in this generation who has even close to the level of, like, the vocal range and everything that she has. She's, like, obviously she's a massive talent, and I think for her, I mean, like, a lot of these artists, they're big because we're asking, you know, where, I mean, for Lana Del Rey, it's more of where is she in the pop music landscape now, but, like, a lot of these artists on here are all-timers, and it's just like, where do they fit and what's in it for them? In fact, like, plotting a way forward from an artistic standpoint versus a sales standpoint, like, as I get older and watch these artists get older, I'm just like, where's the bar? What is success? What isn't success? It, like, for me, it almost exclusively determines, is determined by the individual, you know what I mean, and what they're looking for.
Yeah, I don't know, like, just, like, with her stature, like she is just like, you know, your mom's gonna go buy it, you're gonna listen to it. Absolutely. Like, it's just like, you give it as a gift, like, it's like, she's perfect for all the award shows. She's gonna host all of those. She's gonna be on SNL. Like,
yeah,
she's at the top of the top for artists. She, you know,
her visibility is
there's just, like, there's no, like, the only way I could see her, like, you know, missing the mark is, like, if she tries to do too much experimentally and people kind of turn on her, but I don't see that really happening.
Yeah,
so I think anything she's gonna do is gonna be, like, refined and palatable in some sort of way.
I completely agree. On that note, Mr. Coburn, 2021 is going to be. Do you have anybody else you wanna talk about?
No, I mean, I think we kind of, we're hitting the mark on, like, the big artists.
We got some smaller stuff coming out. I know Slow Tie has a song out. Georgia Smith apparently is gonna be putting out some more stuff.
Yeah, there's gonna be a few like artists I think who are gonna kind of rise to prominence. It's gonna be interesting to watch because we don't have the shows, and so we don't have those, you know, people who are kind of breaking from doing shows or you know, certain things like that are kind of like the traditional, you know, ways that we cross over. So it'll be interesting to see who kind of pops up, and I think there's a lot of people on our radar who we're gonna call early. I think we should maybe even talk like a little bit about that later on, maybe in March or something like that, about some of these new artists, and maybe do like another look forward for smaller acts.
Ooh, I like that. Look out for that podcast. Anyways, guys, we gotta get going. Coburn, thank you so much. And try to chill out, everyone. Try to stay healthy, and we'll talk to you soon.